Hey guys, we're starting the next unit on area, and I wanted to start off by reminding you a few formulas. So we know that the area of a square is side squared, so we'll use S for the side, and and the area of a rectangle is base times height. So we would call this the base and this the height. So we just do base times height. So hopefully that looks familiar to you. And then a parallelogram, you may or may not have seen this, but remember that a parallelogram is the same thing as a rectangle. So just imagine that if I were to cut off those slanted pieces and move this piece over here, it would make a rectangle. So that's why it's also going to be base times the height. Okay, so parallelogram is also base times height. All right, so for a triangle, remember that we have 1/2 base times height, so that's just half of a rectangle. Remember to do your perpendicular height to your base. And then we have a trapezoid. Again, I don't know if you've done trapezoid, but trapezoid is basically going to be 1/2 of your height. And then we've got two different bases. So I've got base 1 and base 2. So we're going to do 1/2 the height times base 1 plus base 2. Basically what we're doing is we're averaging those bases and multiplying by the height. All right, so then we also have kite and rhombus, and these are probably ones that you have not seen before. So whether you have a kite or a rhombus, remember rhombus, all four sides are congruent. Kite, only the adjacent sides would be congruent. So that would be a kite versus a rhombus would be all four sides. Okay, either way though, we would be using the diagonals. So that would be a diagonal and this would be a diagonal. So my area would be 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Some postulates you should know, if two polygons are congruent, then they have the same area. That makes sense, yes. And then the area of the region is the sum of the areas of non-overlapping parts. So this is what we're going to use a lot in class next time, is we're going to be combining shapes together. So if I were to make like a house shape, I would know that the area of that figure is going to be the area of that triangle plus the area of that square. Okay, so that's what that's all about. So let's see if we can do some problems here. So find the area of a square with a perimeter of 30. So if I have a square, and again, in geometry, it's helpful to draw out a picture. If I have a square with a perimeter of 30, remember all of these are congruent. So what would each side be if the area was 30? So we would just divide by 4, right? So each side would be 7.5, right? So all we have to do then for the area is do 7.5 squared. So if I do that, that gives me 56.25, okay, which is D. All right, so here we're going to find the area of triangle ABC, so that's the shaded in triangle. Remember, for a triangle we need the base, so that would be 3, and then the height, and remember height is always perpendicular to the base, so we're using the 5 here. So just make sure you're careful that you're using the correct measurements. So 1/2 of 5 times 3 would be 1/2 of 15, which is 7.5 square units. All right, and then if we find the base length of a triangle with an area and a height of that. So here we're using our formula to work backwards. So we know that the area is 52, that the we don't know the base, that's what we're trying to find, and that the height is 13. Okay, so I would recommend multiplying by 2, so that would be 104, and then divide by 13. Okay, and that actually comes out to be 8. So we would know that the base of that triangle is 8. So let's look at a couple more. So here we're going to find the area of the parallelogram. And notice that it's kind of weird to look at this, but you see how this 8 is perpendicular to this side of the parallelogram. So we really want to make sure that we're using this is the height. Height is always perpendicular to the base, and this would be the base. So for a parallelogram, we just have base times height. So that would give us 120. Like I said, just be careful with what you're doing. And when we come back to class, we'll be doing a lot harder ones. So this is just a review to help refresh your memory. So the area of the rectangle is 60 square units. And they gave us the base is 2x minus 1. And the height is 1/2 x. So here we're just trying to find the value of x. So 1/2 x times 2x, that would be 1x squared minus 1/2 x. And then since it's quadratic, we would want to subtract the 60. And what I would probably do is, since I have a half, I would multiply everything by 2. So that gives me 2x squared minus x minus 60. So at this point, we have to factor. And I had made a correction there. I forgot to multiply the 60 by 2. So this should be 2x squared minus x minus 120. So going back to the factoring, however you like to do that, if some of you like the box method, if you do 2 times negative 120, that would be negative 240. And then negative 16 and positive 15 would give me that 1. So you could do your little box here. This would be 2x squared. This would be negative 120. This would be negative 16x. This would be 15x. Okay, just so you could see where I'm getting all this. So this would be our 2x. This would be 15. This would be x. And then this would be negative 8. So I'm going to have 2x plus 15, and then x minus 8. So if I set each of those equal to 0, I'm going to get x is equal to 15 halves, which is 7.5, or negative 7.5. And then this is going to be x is positive 8. So if we go up here, the only thing that makes sense, a negative wouldn't make sense, so we would pick positive 8. All right, so let's do a few more. Here's a kite. So this one is a new one that we haven't done yet. So a kite, remember that is going to be bisected, so this is also 10, and that these are right angles here. This says the area of the kite is 160. Find the length of BD. So BD is one of the diagonals. AC is the other diagonal. So when I'm using my area formula, I'm going to fill in 160 for my area, and then I'm going to fill in 20 for one of the diagonals, and the other diagonal is going to be my BD. So 160 is equal to 10 d squared d2 divided by 10, so the other diagonal has to be 16. So BD is 16 inches. All right, and then here we have find the area of a trapezoid with those vertices. So if we just kind of think about sketching that out real quick, and again, you don't have to have a grid, you can just estimate those, because really we're just using this for so we can estimate the sides and all that. So if we graph these points, we're at 0, 0, 2, 4, 6, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and notice how they made that nice and easy to figure out, and then this is 9, 0. So here's our trapezoid. So the height and the bases will be very easy to figure out. All right, so this base up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, is 4. This base down here is 9. And then the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. So all we do is plug those values in. 1/2, our height is 4, and then we're doing base 1 plus base 2. So this is going to be 2 times 4 times plus 9 is 13. So that's going to give me 26. All right, so we're going to do some more in class. So just be ready for that and make sure you have all your formulas.